Cannes is a different thing. Cannes, you know, the French people have been so supportive. This particular picture would be a good picture to come with because it's about movie making, and the Cannes audience in general is, of course, a cinema audience, and intolerance and discrimination in the country. People who had never voted in years felt it was important to show that France was a democracy who had no patience. It does have an ironic quality to it that I would be here at the end of that movie. But I did think when I made the movie that it would be a very, very good one to show at the Cannes Film Festival. The last 10 years or 12 years or so, this was one that I felt was very apropos. If I'm going to go to Cannes, this was one I felt I should go with. Not to become pretentious about this, but that a work of art does proceed from the unconscious. That it's possible if the director of the movie could have seen, you know, he would have been so hands-on and so manipulative and so propagandistic. I always, and this is the part you'll think is facetious, I always surround myself with wonderful actors and actresses. I try and give them as much freedom as they want, really, and in the end, they make me look good. Over the years, people have said, even if they haven't liked my film, they've said, I didn't like the film, but the actors and actresses were wonderful. And that's because the actors and actresses that I hire are wonderful before they work with me in their other films, and when they work with me, and after they leave me, because they're tremendously talented people. And so I hire them and try not to give them too much direction, or any direction at all if I can get away with it. I try not to speak to them very much. And it's amazing how good the performances come out, and then everyone says, oh, you have such a way to direct these people, it's so amazing. But it's really the hiring that's what I do. And that really is the secret of it, and that's what I've tried to do. You know, 75% of the suffering that goes on with people goes on because their love relationships either don't work, or they can't meet the right person, or the person that they're with does not fulfill them, or something has gone sour, and people are constantly involved in trying to find some formula to get advice on, or to make it work. I would say the same thing that I would say about relationships, you know, whatever works. You know, if you like a good steak now and then, and it makes you happy, that's great. I myself, as much as I love French cooking, could not eat a frog or a dog, you know, but if French people like that, and that's part of the culture, you know, I think it's great. It beats monkey brains. There are cultures that eat that. Is there another question? That's what the Hollywood system is about. As far as the government helping, you know, it's a very tricky area. Because the government helps, and then it's very, very hard for the government to not intrude in some way, even though at first they always make an effort not to. Eventually you find that the government intrudes. Well, I'll tell you an interesting thing. First off, I'm not sensitive to the critics because I never ever read the critics. I never ever read anything about me. I never read the critics. I never read the articles about myself. I did when I first started. But the United States, excuse me, is a very, very big country, and I noticed they used to give me hundreds and hundreds of criticisms when I first made my first few films. And I would start to read them. I didn't know any better. And someone in one part of the United States would love something, and someone else somewhere else would not. And it got to be very confusing. So I stopped a long time ago, and I felt the less I read about myself, the simpler my life would be. And so I haven't read any reviews of myself, or interviews, or magazine articles, or watched any films made of me, or anything like that. And to emphasize what I did well. And I'm not saying they did it 100% of the time, but for the most part, over the 30 years that I've been making films, the critics have been very, very kind to me, very generous to me. And even at times where nobody would come to see my film, I think it's funny and I laugh. And, you know, this doesn't carry through to the end of the film. When I see the first cut of the film always, I always have the feeling of this could have been done by a blind man. You know, I always have that catastrophic feeling about the film. But while I'm making it, I laugh very frequently at sequences and other actors and jokes. No way that I could really fathom in my mind exactly what to show you that would be better than something you could conjure up yourself. I just thought that should be something that each person should think about himself and make up for himself. That would be funnier that way. Probably my favorite romantic movie, and I'm just doing this off the top of my head, I would really have to think about it more deeply because I always take those questions so seriously. Probably the Roman Holiday was you know, a very, very successful and romantic American movie that I thought was very, very good. Played in New York. Was Clouseau made it years ago about bondage or something. That played very briefly in New York. That was a very sexy movie.
La Prisonnière.
Yeah, and then we couldn't see it anymore. Then I found that I couldn't see it anymore. But that I thought was I don't know if I would still feel the same. I was younger when I saw it, but I found it to be a movie that had some genuinely erotic it stays the same. I mean, it's no more difficult. You know, each film, it's not an exact science, so each film is very difficult because the fact that you've made many of them doesn't really mean anything. Each one is a completely different experience, but it doesn't get any harder. I mean, I feel the same way that I felt when I made my first film. You know, a few little technical things improve over the years. You learn a few little technical things, but all the critical questions remain pretty much the same. I think it's scheduled to be released in England. These things there's some kind of pseudoscience involved with them. First of all, I've never had any particular love affair with the English audience. I mean, they've been, you know, very nice when I gave them a good film. And it has been true that for some reason, and none of us ever can figure out why, the French people, it's taken the validation of the French on some of our most important artists to make the American public aware of them. This goes back to Edgar Allan Poe, to William Faulkner, to you know, any number of film directors, and certainly any number of important American jazz musicians who have a serious attitude toward all the arts, toward jazz, toward cinema, towards arts that in the United States are not regarded so seriously. You know, in the United States, painting perhaps and literature are taken more seriously than jazz music. Classical music is taken more seriously than jazz music, and you know, literature is taken, or theater taken more seriously than movies are. In Europe, this is not the case, and France has always been a leader in that area. You know, the artists get more respect, there's more sensitivity toward their work, and more serious understanding of it. And I think comedies in general are more popular than serious films, as a general rule. Everyone's, and certainly including mine, because I'm better at them. I'm better at comedies.